What if I told you that the doubt living in your mind isn't yours, that it wasn't born with you, that it was installed, not by truth, not by evidence, but by repetition, by years of hearing what couldn't be done, of seeing others settle, of watching powerful men shrink to fit into small cages built by fear? What if I told you that every hesitation you've carried, every quiet voice that told you to wait, to hold back, to question your own strength, was never yours to begin with? It was borrowed, programmed, repeated, but not born. Because you, my friend, you were not made to question yourself. You were made to build, you were made to rise, you were made to win. Not eventually, not someday, not when everything lines up perfectly, but now. And if you stay with me, not halfway, not half listening, but fully, if you breathe these words, speak them aloud, and return to them daily, then something will begin to shift, not in theory, not in imagination, in identity. Because what I'm about to give you is not a motivational talk. It is a reprogramming, a full recalibration of the system that has quietly allowed doubt to lead your steps for far too long. And when it's over, when the last word has been spoken, you will no longer recognize the version of yourself that accepted smallness as fate. Because doubt, as I will show you, is a habit, and habits can be broken. But belief is a decision. Belief is the act of remembering who you were before the world taught you to shrink. And today we return to that man, the one who knew he was meant for more, the one who didn't wait for proof to take the first step, the one who acted as if victory was inevitable. And let me tell you something most men never hear. That man is still inside you, waiting, watching, wondering when you'll stop listening to the old voice and start moving like a builder again. So say it with me now. I was not made to doubt, I was made to win. Say it louder. I was not made to question, I was made to decide. Say it until your voice shakes off the dust of hesitation. I do not wait for courage, I move anyway. Because today, we are not here to play with belief. We are here to make it law. And once you've made a law of the mind, the body, the voice, the results, they follow. So stay with me from this first word to the last breath. And let's begin the process of burning doubt out of your identity for good. Let me be very clear, you were not born with doubt. No man is. Doubt is not a natural instinct. It is not hardwired into your soul. It is a condition, a disease of the environment, a mental parasite that grows only when fed. And the world, my friend, is full of feeders. You were born with curiosity, with hunger, with fire. No child comes into this world second-guessing himself. Look at any young boy. He does not wonder if he can walk. He tries. He does not ask if he has permission to explore. He moves. He falls and rises, screams and reaches, not because he's certain, but because he hasn't learned to fear yet. Doubt is not natural. It is taught. It is modeled. It is repeated. And by the time you are grown, you've been told, directly or indirectly, that your power is dangerous, that your fire must be tamed, that dreaming is for others, not for you. But here is the good news. If doubt was learned, belief can be built. And that building begins with remembering the truth of who you are before the world shaped you. It begins with one small act of rebellion, rejecting the idea that you must be hesitant just because others around you were. Let me show you how this worked in the lives of the men I studied. Henry Ford, for example, was not a man born into advantage. He had no prestigious schooling, no wealthy lineage, and yet he refused to learn doubt. When the world told him his vision for an affordable automobile was madness, he responded with action. His own engineers, men with greater education, told him it was impossible to build an 8-cylinder engine in a single block. And what did he say? Produce it anyway. Not once, not twice, but every time they returned with failure, Ford said the same words, produce it anyway. That's not genius. That's not luck. That's belief. A belief so firm, so final, that it didn't flinch in the face of impossibility. Ford had trained his mind to obey his vision, not his environment. He had unlearned doubt and replaced it with decision. And that decision became law, not just for him, but for the industry he led. Or consider Thomas Edison, who failed, not once, not 10 times, but over 10,000 times in pursuit of the electric light. 10,000 failures, 10,000 moments where doubt could have taken the throne. But Edison didn't entertain doubt because he had built something stronger, identity. He didn't say, maybe I can. He said, I am the man who will. And that identity became armor. Every time a test failed, he didn't internalize it. He moved forward because his belief wasn't rooted in evidence. It was rooted in repetition. He had told himself again and again that this would work, that he would work, that something would work. And so it did. Understand this. Belief is not a feeling. It's not something you stumble into. It's not something that floats down from the heavens when you meditate long enough. It is built the same way a bridge is built, the same way a habit is built, through consistent daily acts of decision and discipline. You choose belief even when you don't feel it. You repeat belief even when your old identity screams otherwise. You walk like the man who knows, even when part of you still doubts, until that part no longer has a seat at the table. That's what Andrew Carnegie understood. When I sat with him, when I studied his methods and mindset, I discovered something that changed me forever. Carnegie didn't see belief as optional. He saw it as structural, as foundation. He once told me, if a man does not command his own mind, someone else will. And that's exactly what doubt is, a sign that you've surrendered your authority. Not consciously, not deliberately, but over time in small, subtle ways, you've let doubt set the tone. But that ends now, because now you are awake. Now you know the origin of the doubt you carry. It wasn't born with you. It was given to you, and now you are giving it back. Say this out loud. Doubt is not mine. I refuse to carry it. Say it again. I do not live by hesitation. I live by decision. This is how you begin, not by feeling powerful, but by speaking power, by walking with posture that reflects certainty even before certainty has taken root. Because the subconscious does not obey logic, it obeys repetition. And every time you move like a builder, speak like a leader, act like a winner, you are building belief. The man you were meant to be, he's already in you. He's just waiting for the noise to stop. He's waiting for the command to rise, and this is that moment. Let us now speak of the most powerful moment in any man's life, the moment he makes a decision so clear, so permanent, so final, that the old self can no longer survive it. Because here is a truth too many never realize. Identity is not discovered. It is decided. You do not stumble into greatness. You declare it. You do not wait to become confident. You decide that from this moment forward, confidence will be your posture. You do not hope to one day become fearless. You decide to act even when afraid, and that very act rewrites the code of who you are. You see, every man lives within an identity. The problem is, most men live inside an identity they never chose, an identity built from accidents, from repetition, from fear, from the small opinions of small minds. And because they never consciously declared who they were, they've become a collage of contradictions, powerful in potential, paralyzed in practice. But the greats I studied, the men who carved their names into the history of achievement, they all did one thing first. They decided who they were, not based on circumstances, not based on feelings, but based on vision. Let me take you again to Henry Ford. Before he was a titan of industry, before he revolutionized transportation, Ford made a simple decision. He would build a car for the common man. That was it. A sentence, a commitment, a line in the sand. But once that decision was made, everything changed. He no longer acted as a mechanic. He no longer thought like a worker. He became a builder of machines, of ideas, of a future only he could see. And when the world doubted him, when bankers and engineers and newspapermen mocked his aim, Ford did not bend. Why? Because his identity was decided. He had already chosen who he was. And once a man makes that choice, the world loses its power to define him. Thomas Edison did the same. Do you imagine Edison became an inventor by accident? That the light bulb was a happy fluke? No. He decided long before the world believed in him. He said, "I will illuminate the world." And then he began walking toward that vision. Every single day, when others called him a fool, when failure visited him daily, when results did not arrive for years, he moved forward anyway. Because in his mind, the result had already happened. He was simply catching up to it. Understand what I'm telling you. Results follow identity, not the other way around. If you believe that you must prove yourself before you can claim greatness, you've already lost. The men who rise are the men who decide to rise. First in silence, first in solitude, first without evidence. Even Abraham Lincoln, a man who walked through war and turmoil, was not led by public opinion. He was led by decision. He did not need everyone to agree before he acted. He had already determined the value of freedom, the weight of unity, the dignity of mankind. And because that decision was final, fear could not break him. Now it is your turn, and you must write your identity in stone. Not scribble it in sand, not whisper it with apology. Declare it. Who are you? Who have you decided to be, regardless of what you've done up to this point? Because until that decision is made, doubt will always have a voice. You must say aloud, "I am not a man of hesitation. I am a man of execution. I do not drift between identities. I have chosen one, and I walk in it." And do not say it once. Say it until your subconscious hears it so often, so clearly, that it accepts it as law. That is how belief becomes identity. That is how decision becomes destiny. Let me offer you a ritual, the same one I saw in the lives of Carnegie, Schwab, Ford, Edison. Each morning before the world speaks, you speak. You declare who you are. You speak your identity aloud, not with hope, but with authority. You write it. You repeat it. You move in alignment with it, even when you don't yet feel like it. Because feeling will follow form. You must form the identity, and the emotion will rise to support it. Carnegie used to say, "A man's habits are simply his beliefs in motion." And what are habits but repeated actions born from a chosen identity? The man who sees himself as a king does not move like a servant. The man who has decided to lead does not wait for consensus. The man who knows he is meant to win does not flirt with doubt. He moves, and with every step his identity deepens until he becomes a force. So I ask you now, what have you been waiting to decide? What version of yourself have you postponed? What identity are you pretending is not yours to claim? Let that end here. Today you decide. You write the new name. You declare the new frame. You burn the bridges to the old self and never look back. Let this be the line. From this moment forward, you do not doubt, you decide, and the world, it adjusts. There is a moment in every man's journey where the greatest progress comes not from a new step forward, but from cutting off the way back. You see, movement without commitment is not progress. It is dabbling. It is dipping a toe into destiny while keeping one foot anchored in doubt. But no empire was ever built by a man who kept a backup plan for mediocrity. No legacy was written by the one who kept the exit door open just in case it got hard. The men I studied, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Lincoln, they all understood a simple, sobering truth. If you leave the bridge standing, fear will always tempt you to cross it. The phrase "burn the boats" has become cliché, but it was not cliché for those who lived it. Let me take you to a true story. Hernán Cortés, the Spanish conquistador, landed on the shores of Mexico in 1519 with a handful of men to face an empire that vastly outnumbered him. And what did he do upon arrival? He burned the ships that brought them there, not because he was reckless, but because he understood human nature. When the mind believes there's a way out, it never fully commits to the way forward. And though I do not romanticize conquest, the principle remains timeless. You must destroy the exit if you want to force destiny to open the door ahead. This principle is not only true in war, it is true in your daily life. Henry Ford did not say, "We'll try this automobile idea, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back to making carriages." Number. He staked everything. When he committed to the Model T, he shut down production of every other car his company was making, against the advice of his board, against the fear of his peers. He simplified, he streamlined, he focused, and in doing so, he created a revolution in manufacturing. Why? Because there was no retreat. Ford didn't seek comfort, he sought completion. Thomas Edison, too, had no plan B. When he set out to create a functioning light bulb, he faced more than 10,000 failures. But each attempt was made with the resolve of a man who had already sealed his fate. He once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That is not the voice of a man who left the door open to quit. That is the voice of a man who locked it, threw away the key, and set fire to the room behind him. Andrew Carnegie, as a young immigrant with nothing but a job in a telegraph office and a mind full of ambition, decided early that poverty would not have the final word. He did not pursue wealth as a wish. He pursued it as a necessity, not for greed, but for impact. He devoted himself to mastery of industry, management, communication. When he committed to steal, he committed with everything. He was not dabbling. And because of that, he rose. What is your retreat? Be honest. Is it the job you keep as a safety net even though it dulls your soul? Is it the voice you silence because you fear what others will say? Is it the plan you never start because you keep telling yourself you'll do it when the timing is better? These are not strategies. These are shelters for fear. And as long as they exist, you will never walk with full power. You cannot act like you were meant to win if your energy is split between building and retreating. You must commit fully. And you must prove that commitment by eliminating the exits. It's easy to say, "I'm all in." It's another thing to remove every other option. That's what the greats did. Abraham Lincoln did not entertain compromise when it came to preserving the Union. He knew the risks. He knew the cost. He knew that war would scar the nation. But he also knew that preserving the soul of America required conviction without loopholes. And so with ink and blood, he wrote his stand into history. You must now do the same metaphorically and mentally. Burn the retreat. Let fear scream. Let doubt panic. Let the old self cry out in protest, but do not go back. Delete the maybe. Delete the someday. Delete the "if this doesn't work, I'll..." Those phrases are permission slips for failure. If you were meant to win, and I believe you were, then act like it by removing every option except victory. Even when it's slow, even when it's lonely, even when no one claps, especially then. Because once you make the decision and seal it with action, something shifts. Your mind stops negotiating, your energy stops scattering, your spirit sharpens, and the world starts to bend. Say it aloud. There is no retreat. I have made my decision, and the door behind me is gone. I move with finality. I act without escape. These words must not be spoken once. They must be repeated daily until your body forgets what it felt like to doubt. This is not about drama. It's about discipline. Burning the bridge is not loud. It's not showy. It's the quiet decision you make before dawn that today again you will not run. And if you hold that line long enough, something incredible happens. Fear stops talking because it knows you're not listening anymore. There is a voice in every man's mind that determines the quality of his life long before the world ever lays a finger on him. It is the voice that speaks when no one else is around. The one that whispers when the door closes, when the lights are off, when the results don't come, and when the crowd has gone quiet. That voice is not always kind, not always supportive, not always true, but it is always present. And if you do not train it, it will train you. It is a process called autosuggestion. The deliberate and repeated feeding of the subconscious mind with instructions so clear, so consistent, so emotionally charged that they become identity. The subconscious mind does not reason. It accepts whatever is repeated to it with emotion. And herein lies your greatest threat or your greatest weapon. Let me show you what this means through real lives. When Henry Ford famously said, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right," he wasn't trying to be clever. He was revealing how he built his empire. Ford didn't have the most knowledge. He didn't hold the most degrees. He didn't master every detail of his business. But he trained his inner voice to say one thing over and over: "It will be done." And because he repeated that, his subconscious went to work making it reality. But here's the mistake most men make. They speak carelessly to themselves. They allow doubt, hesitation, worry, and worst of all, sarcasm, to run on repeat. And they wonder why their progress always stalls. The subconscious mind doesn't understand humor when you joke about being lazy or failing or being stuck. It hears those thoughts as instructions. It installs them. It obeys them. And soon you do too. Thomas Edison, after thousands of failed attempts to create a working light bulb, was asked by a reporter how he kept going. He replied, "I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." But understand what that really was. It wasn't just optimism. It was programming. It was a mental script so strong, so repetitive, that failure could not take root. Every time he spoke those words, he trained his inner voice to keep moving forward, and the voice obeyed. Andrew Carnegie, too, was relentless in this discipline. He instructed the young men under his mentorship to write their chief aim and read it aloud every morning and every night. He believed that a man could become unstoppable if he simply repeated the right idea often enough, not whispered, not read silently, spoken. Why? Because the voice you speak becomes the voice you hear, and the voice you hear becomes the voice you believe, and what you believe shapes your world. So let me ask you, what have you been telling yourself? When no one's watching and results aren't showing, what do you say? "I'm tired. This probably won't work. Maybe I'm not the type. I'm just trying." These are not harmless phrases. They are weapons turned inward. And the more you repeat them, the deeper they sink. But the good news is this: you can change the script. It begins with discipline. Each morning, before the world gives you its version of reality, you must give yourself yours. You must look yourself in the mirror and declare, "I act before fear has a voice. I do not drift. I do not delay. I am the kind of man who keeps his word, even when no one is watching." And again, at night, just before sleep, when the mind is soft, when the subconscious is open, you speak your aim, you speak your identity, you speak your next move. Why? Because the mind remembers what it hears last. This is not motivational fluff. This is neurological reality. It is how the brain wires thought into habit, how the habit becomes instinct, and how instinct becomes destiny. Even Charles M. Schwab, in the height of his industrial leadership, was known for his unmatched optimism. But it wasn't blind. He had trained his focus. He avoided negative language. He redirected failure. When others panicked, Schwab reframed. That mental strength didn't come from birth. It came from repetition. You must now create your own script, a handful of phrases, spoken with intensity, repeated with conviction, not generic affirmations you found in a book, your words, your beliefs, written with fire. Let me help you begin. I do not explain my power, I execute it. My actions train my mind to believe. I am not waiting for motivation, I move with discipline. Write them, speak them, repeat them daily. And here's what will happen. The inner voice that once wavered will harden. It will sharpen. It will begin to speak with clarity, even when things feel uncertain. And when that happens, everything changes. You will no longer talk yourself out of action. You will talk yourself into motion. You will no longer entertain excuses. You will interrupt them with new instruction. You will no longer doubt your identity. You will reinforce it with every breath. This, right here, is how you kill the doubt. You don't wait for it to leave. You drown it in truth. You replace the old voice. You install a new one. And once the subconscious accepts that new voice as dominant, doubt will knock, and your mind will not even hear it. Because the inner voice is too focused, too decisive, too trained to look backward. So I challenge you, make this speech your ritual, and not just once, but again, and again, and again. Because repetition is how we become. There comes a moment in every man's life where he must choose, will I follow how I feel, or will I follow what I've decided? Most men, without knowing it, live under the rule of emotion. They act when it feels good. They pause when it feels hard. They speak when they're confident. They hide when they're uncertain. And they wonder why their life never becomes what it was meant to be. But the builders, the producers, the titans of history, they lived by a different compass. They were not governed by moods, by opinion, or by fear disguised as logic. They moved by faith. They didn't wait to feel brave. They acted before courage arrived. They trusted what they decided more than what they felt. Let me explain this clearly. Faith is not some mystical energy floating in the ether. Faith is a mental attitude, a muscle, a discipline. It is built like a wall, brick by brick, through repetition, decision, and the refusal to waver. And most importantly, faith is a choice. You do not need a reason to believe. You choose to believe, and the reason will follow. Henry Ford embodied this. He was told repeatedly by engineers, financiers, and supposed experts that his ideas were impossible, that the public wouldn't want a car, that an 8-cylinder engine in one block couldn't be done. And yet, he replied every time with a simple command, build it anyway. Why? Because his belief wasn't based on the external world. It was born inside him. He installed faith through repetition, through forward motion, through refusing to entertain contradiction. Ford didn't always feel strong, but he always led himself like he was. That is the key. You do not need to feel the faith. You need to move like it's already there. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times on his journey to create the electric light, but he was never broken. Why? Because he had already decided that success was inevitable. And once that decision was installed, he no longer needed external validation. Each failure wasn't a sign to stop. It was evidence that progress was being made. That is what faith looks like. Not emotion, but identity backed by action. Now let me speak plainly. Most men confuse emotion with guidance. They think that if something feels heavy, it's a sign they should stop. If it feels uncertain, they assume it's the wrong path. But listen to me now. Discomfort is not a red light. It is the toll you pay to walk the road of greatness. Abraham Lincoln knew this well. He was elected president during a time when the nation was fracturing. His choices would determine not only the fate of the United States, but the fate of slavery. His cabinet was divided. The nation was at war. And the voices around him grew louder and louder with doubt. But Lincoln did not flinch. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, not because he felt the support, but because he believed in the mission. He moved on faith, not emotion, and that's what made him great. Emotion may feel real, but it lies often. It speaks in the language of the past. It echoes your old habits, your old identity, your old doubts. But faith speaks from the future. Faith speaks from the man you decided to become, not the man you used to be. That is why I empathize repetition so deeply, because repetition creates faith. The more you speak belief, the more you act from it, the more it becomes your default. And once it becomes your default, emotion loses its grip. So I ask you now, who is leading your life? Is it the man who acts on fire, on vision, on purpose? Or is it the man who waits until he feels good to make a move? You must make the decision today. I lead from faith, not from feeling. That means you show up even when you're tired. You speak truth even when your voice shakes. You follow through even when the results haven't yet arrived. Why? Because faith is not about evidence. It is about conviction. Let me give you a practical way to live this out. Every morning, declare your beliefs out loud. Not what you feel, but what you choose to believe. I act before I feel ready. I am not a slave to emotion. I command emotion. I walk by faith because the man I am becoming is already real. Then move immediately, without debate. You build faith not by thinking about it, but by acting as if it were already yours. And yes, you will feel resistance. Yes, the old thoughts will rise, but they are ghosts. You do not negotiate with ghosts. You replace them with fire. This is the same process Charles M. Schwab used when building the foundations of U.S. Steel. He wasn't always certain of the outcome, but he carried himself with certainty. He knew that people don't follow emotion. They follow conviction. And the only way to carry conviction is to practice it daily. So train yourself to move without needing to feel perfect. Say this now. I do not trust the voice of emotion. I trust the voice of purpose. I do not wait to feel powerful. I act until I am powerful. I lead myself. I do not follow the wind. Repeat these every morning. Let them take root. Let them replace the voice that once led you to pause. Let them become the soundtrack of your actions. Because the man who leads from emotion will always be led by fear. But the man who leads with faith, he becomes unshakable. He becomes unstoppable. He becomes inevitable. Let us now continue to the next part, because faith must always be matched with action. Not random motion, but decisive execution. There is a law that governs all progress, and it is this: indecision is the seedbed of fear. It is not failure that paralyzes a man. It is not rejection. It is the simple refusal to choose. And I tell you plainly, no man who hesitates can ever lead himself. He will be led by circumstances, by emotions, by the opinions of others, by the inertia of yesterday's version of himself. But the man who decides, the man who moves, that man becomes a force. I taught that every successful man I studied had the habit of making decisions quickly and changing them slowly, if at all. I found this in every titan, every mogul, every builder of empires. They did not sit in endless deliberation. They did not require all the facts before they began. They simply decided and let the path reveal itself in motion. Let me show you what that looks like through the story of Henry Ford. Ford's engineers once told him flatly that it was impossible to cast an 8-cylinder engine in one solid block. They tried, they failed, they returned, expecting Ford to admit defeat. Instead, he looked at them with certainty and said, "Produce it anyway." Not once, not twice, but repeatedly until it was done. Ford did not weigh his options. He did not say, "Let's brainstorm alternatives." He decided. And because he decided, the world bent. That's the law. The world does not yield to the man who is clever. It yields to the man who is certain. Thomas Edison lived the same law. Imagine failing over 10,000 times at anything. Most men would have quit before 10. Most men would have doubted themselves. Most men would have asked for permission or waited for approval. But Edison had already decided, I will invent the light bulb. And because the decision was final, every failure was just another stepping stone. Not because Edison had superhuman endurance, but because he had eliminated the option to stop. You must do the same. You must stop leaving back doors open. You must stop entertaining maybe. You must stop debating your own destiny. Decide, and once you do, move. Even if you don't know the full path, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, because clarity is not found in stillness. It is forged in movement. Charles M. Schwab, when he was chosen to lead U.S. Steel, was not the oldest or the most experienced, but he made decisions quickly. He moved decisively. When asked by Andrew Carnegie to take the reins of a massive industrial consolidation, Schwab didn't ask for time. He didn't form a committee. He said yes and figured out the details on the way. That's how momentum is built. You act, and the mind follows. You move, and fear loses its grip. You execute, and the subconscious begins to trust you. That's what most people never understand. Every time you hesitate, you tell your subconscious, I don't believe myself. But every time you act, even imperfectly, you reinforce the identity of a man who does what he says he will do. And soon, your body, your posture, your thoughts, your very presence begin to reflect that new identity. So I ask you now, what have you left undecided? What path have you delayed, waiting for more time, more clarity, more courage? And how much has that delay already cost you? Because indecision is not neutral. It is expensive. It robs you of time, of energy, of confidence, of opportunity. But you can shut the door on it right now. Say aloud, I do not wait. I do not hesitate. I do not consult fear. My decisions are final. My movement is immediate. My word is law. That is not bravado. That is identity. You do not try. You declare, you do not ask, what if? You say, this is the way. And when your mind resists, as it will, you do not argue. You move. Action is your answer. Every day you delay is another day fear grows stronger. But every day you decide and follow through, you become more powerful than hesitation itself. Let me give you a simple framework. Make your decision quickly, from a place of purpose, not emotion. Move immediately. Do something, anything that confirms the decision. Refuse to reopen the decision unless new facts demand it, not new feelings. Reaffirm daily through repetition. I am a man who moves. I am a man who leads. I am a man who acts. That is how the mind is retrained. That is how confidence is installed. That is how fear is removed, not all at once, but in the daily habit of movement. Even Abraham Lincoln, in the darkest moments of the Civil War, acted. He did not have unanimous support. He did not have clear signs of victory. But he signed the Emancipation Proclamation because he had already decided that slavery must end and the Union must endure. And that's what gave him the strength to lead, not popularity and not consensus. Decision, final, immovable, sacred. And that same power is available to you now, but only if you're willing to shut the door on delay. Say it one more time. I decide quickly. I act without apology. I do not explain who I am. I demonstrate it. Now move. Pick the thing you've delayed. Make the call. Take the step. Close the loop. Because the man who moves first wins, and the man who wins is no longer afraid. Let us now go deeper into the next part. There comes a moment in every man's life when the voice of doubt must be silenced. Not debated, not reasoned with, not comforted, but killed. Not with softness, not with patience, but with the force of a man who has had enough. Because doubt is not something you manage. It is something you starve. And you starve it with faith, with repetition, and with a fire so hot it burns the old version of yourself to ash. Understand this first. Doubt is not truth. It is habit. A reflex you've rehearsed so often, you began mistaking it for wisdom. But it was never your guide. It was never your protection. It was just fear, dressed up in more intelligent clothing. And if you don't name it for what it is, you'll keep calling it being realistic, thinking ahead, or protecting yourself, when what you're really doing is betraying the man you were born to be. You must decide now. Doubt dies here, not tomorrow, not gradually. Now, let me show you how the great ones did it. Abraham Lincoln, the man who held together a torn nation, did not live without fear. He was ridiculed, hated, attacked. He buried his own child during his presidency. He led in chaos, and yet He chose belief every single day. He repeated his purpose in silence. He wrote letters he never sent. He walked alone. But in those moments of solitude, he reaffirmed his mission, not with certainty in outcome, but with certainty in identity. That he was the man to carry this burden, that he must be. Andrew Carnegie, born into nothing, stood in a world run by titans, by giants. He had no pedigree, no special connections. But he carried one advantage, definiteness of purpose, and with it he drowned doubt in repetition. He wrote and spoke his chief aim daily, until the thought of failure simply didn't belong in his mental atmosphere anymore. That's not arrogance. That's mental discipline. That's how a boy from a telegraph office became the richest man in the world. Henry Ford faced endless waves of opposition, from the press, from engineers, from the government. But none of their doubt ever entered his system. Why? Because his internal repetition was louder than their external noise. He told himself what was possible over and over again, until that belief hardened into steel. And that steel built empires. You are not different. The only thing separating you from those men is what you allow to repeat inside your own mind. And I say again, doubt is not real. It is a shadow, a recording, a loop playing on repeat in a man who forgot to change the track. So you must now overwrite it. Not with positivity, not with hope, but with identity. Speak this aloud. I do not argue with doubt, I replace it. I do not let fear speak twice, I silence it with action. I do not shrink, I do not flinch, I do not rehearse weakness. Because the more you rehearse belief, the more your nervous system adapts to that as normal. It doesn't matter how long you've doubted. It doesn't matter how deep the rut is. Repetition rewires everything. But here is what you must understand. Doubt will not die gently. It is an addiction, and it will fight for its life. It will whisper again in the quiet hours, in the moments of fatigue, in the pauses between progress. And when it does, you do not engage. You return to your script. You return to your command. You return to the truth you are now installing. I do not live in hesitation. I move in fire. My belief is louder than my fear. My repetition is my shield. My identity is my weapon. Let this next line burn into your chest. You are no longer allowed to be the man who doubts. He is gone, buried. We do not negotiate with his voice. We do not make room for his excuses. We do not check in on him when times get hard. He had his turn, and he wasted it. Now it's your turn. And the man you've chosen to become, he walks differently. He doesn't need to feel ready. He moves because he said he would. He doesn't need to see the full plan. He trusts the law of motion. And he doesn't fear failure because his identity is rooted in action, not outcome. So say it with finality now. I do not need more time. I need more fire. I do not entertain doubt. I enforce belief. I do not delay. I dominate. Let your new identity be sealed through repetition, through daily decision, through the refusal to let the old voice breathe. This is your moment, not just to hear this speech, but to repeat it, until it becomes your default, until your subconscious no longer recognizes the old you, until doubt doesn't know where to find you anymore. Because the man who wins, he doesn't need 1,000 answers, and he just needs to know who he is and walk like it's already done. So walk and don't look back. The man you used to be, he's not coming with you. Let him die in silence, and let the man of fire rise in his place. Let us end here, not with applause, but with command. Repeat this speech, repeat your belief, repeat your identity until the old self cannot survive.